Lena woke to the sound of her mother's voice cutting through the morning calm like a knife. "Your brother's taking your room. It's final." The words struck her harder than she expected, like a punch she couldn't dodge. She froze, gripping the doorframe, staring at Mason, who leaned casually against the wall, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. His eyes sparkled with a confidence that made her blood boil. Her room wasn't just a place to sleep. Hers, it was the small kingdom she had built from childhood. Painted walls, her favorite posters, the shelves of books she had collected, every corner a piece of her identity. And now, apparently, it belonged to him. "Mom, that's not fair," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, though it trembled. "I've lived there for years." Her mother shook her head, exhaling a sigh of finality. "I'm not arguing. Lena, you'll get another room." She turned and left, leaving Lena staring after her, stunned and furious, a storm brewing in her chest. Mason sauntered past her, whistling under his breath, like he had just won some easy battle. Lena watched him take over her space with deliberate slowness, moving her books, adjusting her desk as if testing her reaction. She clenched her fists, the heat of betrayal spreading through her. It wasn't just her roommate felt like her. Family had decided she didn't matter. Every small grin Mason threw her way felt like salt on a wound. She retreated to the small guest room at the end of the hall, shutting the door behind her, but sleep didn't come. Her mind raced with memories of every time Mason had taken advantage, every sly comment, every smirk when he got his way. She remembered the countless times she had been careful, quiet, patient, while he barged through life without thinking twice. And now he had taken the one thing she valued most. She paced the room, frustration coiling tighter in her chest, each step echoing her fury. How could her mother not see the injustice? How could she allow him to just steal what was hers without consequence? The anger was sweet, sharp, tempting. It whispered possibilities, ideas that Lena barely dared voice even to herself. She began to realize something. Anger alone wouldn't be enough. If she wanted justice, if she wanted Mason to truly understand, she would have to be smarter, quicker, and more careful than him. That night, she sat by the window, staring out at the quiet street, thinking about her parents and the house. Memories of her father handing her a small envelope years ago flickered in her mind. Dusty deeds and signatures, papers she had put away and almost forgotten. She hadn't needed them before, but now a plan began to form. A slow, simmering idea of turning the tables. She imagined Mason's reaction if he ever found out she held the true power over this house. This family, this very room he thought he owned. Lena's pulse quickened with a mix of fear and excitement. She could feel the weight of it pressing against her chest, thrilling and terrifying all at once. The betrayal had opened a door, and she was ready to walk through it. Over the next few days, she observed Mason, learned his habits, noted how he flung her books around carelessly, how he laughed at her absence, how he assumed everything would bend to him. She felt her anger sharpen into a cold, precise focus. Every gesture he made, every word he uttered, fueled the fire inside her. But beneath it, there was something else, a quiet reflection, a whisper of morality. Could she really confront him? Could she really expose him? Or was it better to bide her time, plan carefully, and strike when the moment was perfect? Lena chose patience. She didn't act impulsively. She kept her frustration hidden behind polite smiles in the kitchen, small nods when Mason bragged about claiming her room, a quiet observation that made her eyes sharp and calculating. Her mother, caught in the busyness of the day, didn't notice Lena's growing resolve, nor did Mason suspect the storm brewing quietly under her calm exterior. She began gathering her tools carefully. The old deeds, the documents her father had entrusted her with, legal papers long forgotten in drawers. She organized them meticulously, each sheet a weapon she could deploy when the time was right. With every passing day, she rehearsed the reveal in her mind, imagining Mason's face shifting from arrogance to confusion, fear, maybe even respect. The thought made her heart race. But Lena also wrestled with a quiet voice of doubt. Revenge felt good in imagination, but in reality, could it be controlled? Could she deliver it without losing herself to cruelty? Could she reclaim her space without breaking the bonds of her family irreparably? The questions churned like storm clouds, but she welcomed them. They sharpened her planning, made her think through every possible consequence. In her room, now empty of her personal belongings, she sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the walls, imagining Mason lounging, laughing, treating her space as his own. Each imagined laugh, each careless step on her carpet, each misaligned book on her shelves built the tension inside her. She wasn't just angry, she was calculating, methodical, ready. Lena's mind became a map of possibilities, each pathway leading to a moment where the balance of power would shift. She considered confrontation, subtle psychological games, and finally, the hidden legal power she held quietly in her hands. A plan began to crystallize. By keeping calm, keeping patience, observing without revealing her intent, she could create a moment so impactful that Mason would never forget it. The thought excited her, but it also demanded discipline. She couldn't rush. She had to wait for the perfect opportunity, the perfect setting, the perfect moment to reveal the truth. And as she lay in the small guest room that night, listening to the creaks of the house and the distant sound of Mason's careless laughter, Lena made a silent vow to herself. She would reclaim her room, her power, and her dignity, but on her own terms. The fire of revenge burned quietly, controlled, precise, not yet acted upon, but alive, pulsing with the promise of justice. In that moment, Lena realized something vital. She didn't just want her room back. She wanted recognition, understanding, respect. Mason's smug arrogance and her mother's blind decision had lit a spark inside her that would not be extinguished. Every thought, every plan, every quiet observation was a step toward a reckoning that would shake the household, a reckoning she would orchestrate with careful hands. The betrayal had set the stage. Lena was ready. The next days blurred into a tense rhythm of observation and planning. Lena watched Mason move through her room with a careless ease, flopping onto her bed as if it belonged to him, adjusting her posters, flicking through her books without regard. Every little movement fueled her anger, but also sharpened her focus. She didn't react outwardly, didn't snap, didn't confront him. Instead, she studied him, noting habits, weaknesses, patterns, the way he assumed he had power over everything. Each careless smile, each chuckle at her absence became a mental note, a stepping stone in her invisible map of control. By day 2, she had started preparing quietly, gathering her hidden tools. The deeds and papers from years ago, stored away in folders her parents had forgotten she possessed. Long before Mason's arrogance and her mother's oversight gave her reason to act, she revisited every corner of the house in her mind, plotting, imagining where she could reveal the truth. How Mason would react, how to maximize the impact without making herself appear vengeful or petty. Sleep became a battlefield. She lay awake at night, the dark room pressing in, plotting, rehearsing every scenario, imagining Mason's confusion when the truth hit. The exact words she would say, the pause she would leave him in before reality sank in. The thrill of the plan pumped through her veins, but alongside it ran a quiet tension, a tug of conscience reminding her that revenge, even justified, was a double-edged sword. Lena wrestled with it, weighing the satisfaction of triumph against the danger of cruelty, the risk of destroying family bonds she might regret breaking. By the third day, she began acting carefully in the kitchen, the living room, the hallways, maintaining calm and politeness while watching Mason's arrogance grow. He made jokes at her expense, assumed his victory was complete, yet Lena let every word pass. She smiled when necessary, nodded when required, hid her storm behind a veneer of quiet submission. Each interaction was a rehearsal, each observation a brushstroke in her mental painting of the coming reveal. She began testing small moves, asking casual questions about the house, pretending ignorance, feeling out Mason's reactions, noting his sense of entitlement, how easily he assumed he controlled the space. He bragged about rearranging furniture, made jokes about taking her old bed, laughed as if nothing could touch him. Lena recorded it in her mind, storing every moment, every inflection, every smug glance. At night, she would pull out the folder with the deets, flipping through the pages carefully, touching the inked signatures, imagining the leverage they represented. She was holding a hidden truth that could shift the entire dynamic in her favor, a quiet power that had lain dormant until betrayal awakened it. The idea of confronting Mason filled her with a mix of fear and exhilaration. She imagined his confusion, the disbelief, the way his smug demeanor would crumble under the weight of facts. It was intoxicating, a heady mix of justice and strategy. But Lena didn't want just shock, she wanted control, dignity, and precision. She rehearsed words in her mind, the exact phrases, the timing, the tone. She pictured Mason's reactions, from disbelief to anger to eventual recognition, and she knew she had to remain calm, measured, deliberate. Her morality whispered cautions. Don't humiliate him. Don't hurt him unnecessarily. But her strategic mind reminded her that this was more than revenge. It was reclamation. By day 5, she began subtly shifting the atmosphere. Small changes. In-tone small remarks to her mother about responsibilities in the house. Questions about Mason's plans, all designed to unsettle without revealing her hand. Mason responded with arrogance, unbothered, but Lena noted every twitch, every micro-expression, storing it for the moment of revelation. Each night the tension built, a wire tightened in her chest, a controlled anticipation that made her heart pound. She moved quietly in the house, pretending compliance, but every step was a careful dance of preparation. Her patience became a weapon as much as her knowledge of ownership. The contrast between Mason's carelessness and her deliberate calm made her feel powerful in a quiet, controlled way that thrill-seekers might envy. She also began anticipating potential obstacles. What if her mother intervened? What if Mason reacted violently or ran to challenge her legally? She thought through contingencies, imagined conversations, planned exits, rehearsed explanations, all with meticulous attention to detail. Every scenario strengthened her resolve. By day 7, Lena felt the plan crystallize. She knew exactly when, where, and how she would reveal the truth. Mason would not see it coming. Its arrogance blinded him. Her mother's initial disbelief would amplify the moment, heightening the impact without any need for cruelty. The plan was simple but devastating in its subtlety. A calm presentation, the undeniable truth, and the shift of power without unnecessary humiliation. Every night Lena would lie awake, visualizing Mason's expressions changing from smug confidence to confusion, panic, then reluctant respect. The mental rehearsal became as real as the plan itself, each imagined reaction fueling the excitement and sharpening her mind. At the same time, she battled with internal conflict. Revenge, even carefully measured, was a dangerous temptation. She asked herself repeatedly if she would be satisfied. If the act of reclaiming her room and asserting her rightful ownership would truly heal the sense of betrayal, or if it would deepen family tensions. But she reassured herself that this wasn't cruelty, was justice, reclaiming what was hers, a subtle lesson in respect for boundaries and truth. Lena also considered Mason's perspective. She knew he felt entitled, justified, perhaps even unaware of the harm he had caused. She imagined the disappointment he would feel not at being humiliated, but at realizing his assumptions and arrogance had blinded him. That understanding gave her the moral clarity she needed to proceed. The week passed with a slow, deliberate, Build up each interaction, each observation, each secret preparation, tightening the coil of tension. Lena became more than a wronged sister. She became a strategist, a silent force, a careful architect of a reckoning that would arrive at the perfect moment. She avoided rash actions, avoided unnecessary confrontations, used patience as both shield and sword, storing the ultimate revelation for the precise moment when it would have maximum impact. And all the while, Mason remained oblivious, convinced of his victory, blind to the storm growing quietly in the corner of the house he had invaded. The contrast fueled Lena's resolve further, each day of calm observation a step closer to the climax. Each night of planning a rehearsal for justice. By the end of the week, Lena felt a thrill of readiness. She was poised, prepared, confident in her knowledge and her moral clarity. The betrayal had sparked anger, but it had also forged patience, precision, and strategy. She was no longer just reacting. She was controlling the narrative, shaping the moment of reckoning like a skilled author. The emotional storm inside her had become a focused instrument, a controlled energy that would soon be released in a single calculated revelation. She had fought off rash impulses, allowed herself to think, to plan, to perfect the execution. And now Lena knew the stage was set, the pieces aligned, the moment approaching when Mason would finally confront the truth, when the arrogance of a careless brother would meet the quiet, deliberate power of someone who had been wronged but refused to be defeated. The days of watching, waiting, and planning had sharpened her mind, strengthened her resolve, and clarified her moral compass. She was ready to act not in anger, not in cruelty, but in calculated, undeniable justice. The storm of betrayal had turned into the calm precision of strategy. And Lena was poised for the moment when everything would change. The day of reckoning arrived quietly. With the sun spilling golden light across the house, innocent in its warmth, unaware of the tension crackling inside. Lena moved through the hallways with a calm precision, every step measured, every gesture controlled. Mason flopped onto her bed again, dragging his feet carelessly across her carpet, thumbing through her books with a smirk that had grown almost unbearable over the past week. "This place is mine now," he said casually, tossing a pillow onto the floor as if declaring a victory he already assumed was permanent. Lena's heart raced, but her face remained serene. She had rehearsed this moment countless times, imagined. Every reaction, every hesitation, every spark of disbelief she wanted to see in his eyes. She stepped into the room, closing the door softly behind her, letting the quiet hum of tension settle like smoke. "Is it really yours?" she asked, voice calm, measured, masking the storm inside. Mason's smirk faltered for the first time in days, a flicker of confusion passing over his face. "What are you talking about?" he asked, though uncertainty edged his tone. Lena reached into her bag, pulling out the folder she had prepared. With meticulous care, the leather creaking softly as she opened it, laying out the documents like chess pieces on the table. "Every inch of this house, Mason," she said, her voice steady, deliberate, resonant. "Every wall, every room, every corner. It belongs to me. I've owned it for years." Mason froze, the casual arrogance draining from his features, replaced by confusion, disbelief, a hint of fear he hadn't known before. He glanced toward their mother, who had entered the doorway at some point and now stood wide-eyed, speechless, the weight of realization dawning slowly on her. Lena continued, letting each word sink in, pausing just long enough for the truth to resonate, to shift the balance of power entirely. She watched Mason's eyes dart from document to document, signatures and legal stamps confirming what he had never imagined, shaking off his false sense of control. The smirk was gone, replaced by tight lips, a jaw working overtime as he tried to process the reality. Lena felt a thrill of power, yes, but it was tempered by careful control. She could crush him completely, humiliate him, make him leave the house in disgrace. But she hesitated. She had rehearsed dominance, not cruelty. She had plotted justice, not vengeance that would eat her own peace. Mason finally lifted his eyes to hers, and the confusion was raw, tangible, almost painful. I don't understand, he stammered, voice strained, the arrogance of the past week crumbling. Lena let him squirm under the weight of truth, but she didn't gloat. You assumed, Mason, she said quietly. That possession is power. But you never considered ownership, responsibility, consequences. You forgot that what you take lightly has value, even if you don't recognize it. He sank into a chair, staring at the papers, finally absorbing that the room he had claimed as his own had never been his. That the home itself was under her name, her authority, her right. His earlier confidence had dissolved, replaced by the stark realization that he had been outplayed, outhawed, outmaneuvered, not with aggression, but with patience, intelligence, and the courage to wait for the perfect moment, Lena allowed. Herself a small breath, a subtle relief, sensing the culmination of days of planning, observation, and strategic patience. But she didn't stop there. She wanted this to be more than a moment of shock. She wanted it to be a lesson, a demonstration, of the balance between power and restraint. She leaned back slightly, folding her hands calmly. I'm not going to kick you out, she said, deliberately softening her voice. But this is your warning. Respect my space, respect boundaries, and understand that arrogance is not authority. Mason didn't respond immediately, his mind still whirling through layers of disbelief and dawning understanding. Their mother finally found her voice, muttering something about paperwork and oversight, but Lena silenced it with a raised hand, signaling that this was her moment, her lesson, her controlled resolution. The room was quiet, heavy with tension, each person processing the shift in power, the revelation of truth, the recalibration of relationships. Lena felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything she had experienced before, just because she had reclaimed her room. But because she had done it without losing her moral compass, without descending into vindictiveness. She had let patience, intelligence, and preparation be her instruments of justice. Mason eventually looked up, eyes narrowed, not in defiance, but in acknowledgement of the fact that he had been bested, outmaneuvered, exposed not through confrontation, but through clarity and control. He nodded slightly, a gesture of grudging respect, and Lena felt the weight of it, subtle but satisfying. She realized that revenge, executed without malice, but with precision, could be transformative, not just destructive. It could educate, assert boundaries, and restore dignity, all without creating unnecessary pain or chaos. The thrill of power was tempered by the serenity of moral clarity. Lena moved around the room, picking up a few scattered books, arranging them neatly, reclaiming her space physically as well as symbolically. Mason watched silently, understanding now that his assumptions had been flawed, that his overconfidence had blinded him, and that respect, not dominance, was the true currency of the household. By the time Lena closed the folder and set it aside, the tension had shifted into a quiet, charged calm. Mason no longer laughed, no longer smirked, no longer assumed control. Instead, he sat back, subdued, processing the lesson in humility and respect. Lena felt an unexpected wave of satisfaction, not rooted in cruelty or spite, but in the knowledge that she had exercised patience, intelligence, and moral authority. She had taken betrayal and turned it into a quiet victory, asserting her rights, without damaging family bonds unnecessarily. As evening fell, the house settled into a calm rhythm, the weight of revelation lingering, the dynamic shifted but intact. Lena walked through the halls, every room now a testament to careful planning and strategic patience. She understood fully that revenge, when executed in clarity and controlled intelligence, could teach lessons, restore dignity, and assert justice without causing irreparable harm. Mason eventually left the room, quiet, thoughtful, and perhaps even a little humbled, while Lena remained observing her reclaimed space, aware of the balance she had struck between justice and restraint. The experience had taught her that power is not always in confrontation or destruction. Sometimes it lies in calm, patience, careful planning, and the courage to reveal truth at the perfect moment. By nightfall, Lena reflected on the entire ordeal, the betrayal, the tension, the planning, and the revelation. She felt a sense of completion, not vengeance. She had reclaimed her room, her authority, her dignity, and in doing so had proven that true power is measured not by who can shout the loudest, but by who can control the moment, understand consequences, and act with intelligence and moral clarity. Mason would remember the lesson, their mother would remember the dynamic had shifted. And Lena herself had learned that patience, precision, and moral consideration could transform betrayal into empowerment. She realized that revenge, in its purest form, is not about pain or humiliation. It is about asserting boundaries, reclaiming dignity, and demonstrating intelligence, patience, and strength. Lena's heart was still pounding, but it was no longer fear or anger. It was a quiet, powerful satisfaction, the satisfaction of justice, measured, delivered, and controlled. And as she finally settled into her room that night, the familiar comfort of her space around her, she understood a deeper truth. The greatest victories are not those that destroy, but those that restore balance, respect, and understanding. She had been wronged. She had planned carefully. She had revealed the truth. And she had done so without losing herself to anger or cruelty. That night, the house felt hers in more ways than one, not just legally, but morally, emotionally, and psychologically. The storm of betrayal had passed, leaving clarity, respect, and a powerful sense of earned justice in its wake. Lena had not only reclaimed her room, she had reclaimed herself, her authority, and her understanding of what true power and revenge really meant.